Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm excited to be live with a friend who I've been live with many times in the past. So this will be a great show. Not that they're not always great, but I'm here with Sue Zoldak from the Zoldak Agency. Say hi, Sue.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. So today we're going to talk about branding, marketing, and an intervention that occurred this year when Sue was watching my brand go into like ADHD scatter mode, which is not an inapt description of what was going on. She reached out to me and she said, "Hey, Nicole, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I am not okay. Nothing about this is okay right now." And I know it. And I'm just like stuck in this twirly twirl. And she slowed me the heck down and had a conversation. So we're going to talk about that today. But let's start with Sue. Give us like the cliff notes. Who is Sue Zoldak and how did you get into marketing and communications?
Yes, I originally was a math teacher. That was my original career. And then I did that for about 6 years. But then I went back to my roots, which is in public policy and economics. And I came to Washington, D.C., where I lived for 20 years and worked in public affairs, advertising. And that's how I met Nicole, who, if you didn't know, was also previously in a communications career in the public policy world, and we became friends that way. And eventually, launched my own agency, and I've been running my own kind of ad agencies, political agencies for almost 8 years now. It's going to be 8 years in February. And I currently live in Manhattan, but I still kind of travel back and forth to DC about at least once a month, if not several times a month. But if you have watched, or I guess listened, I should say, to Living Free in Tennessee from the beginning, like I have from episode 1 as a super fan. I've been on several times to chat with Nicole about things like personal branding, branding a small business, how to launch a simple website, how to do simple digital marketing, and just kind of, reaching your audience and things like that, how to define yourself with an audience, how to find an audience, things that might help people who are likely to be entrepreneurs, like a lot of Nicole's listeners are. And in between there, we've had some fun conversations about random other things, but that's mainly what we talk about.
Yeah, you put together a pretty darn cool homeschooling program for your daughter when you decided, the schools aren't working. It's 2020. We got to homeschool now.
Yes. The schools are still not working, but my daughter now goes to a different type of school, which is a lot better. One of the reasons we moved to New York was for my daughter my daughter wants to be an artist, so she is now in a different kind of school. But yes, we did have a very interesting conversation about my view of education. And just before we started this, we were talking about, my view kind of the traditional style of great books and humanities style teaching of kind of combining, literature and reading and art together has kind of always been our approach at home. And so we still kind of try to do that when we can. And I really, that's a topic I also, obviously as a former teacher, I still really enjoy talking about.
Yeah, it was a fun conversation, and I'm going to say this to those of you in the live stream. Let your friends know that if they want to get a step up on building their personal brand, if they're wondering how to get the word out about their podcast, their YouTube channel, their product or service that they are launching or have launched and are frustrated with because they're not getting momentum, tell them to get their butts over here, because right now you can ask Sue Zoldak questions live. If you're hearing this after the fact, it's harder to ask Sue Zoldak questions live. So I think this is something where we have some set places and talking points we want to cover, but I don't care what you ask. You can ask us anything. I'll do my best to work it in. Sue is a wealth of knowledge on going from zero to hero in marketing, basically, just to be totally cliche and to steal from Radio Made Easy. He has a zero to hero ham radio class. But let's kind of start with a lot of people think, okay, I want to do all these things. And we leave our jobs and we discover the one thing we're doing might not be making enough money. So we start doing multiple things. The world is not set up. The world of business, corporate structure, none of it's really set up for what is becoming more and more common, where people have 3 to 5 quote unquote jobs they're doing.
Yep.
So how does that happen, and how do you work with that?
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, people commonly now wear very different hats and multiple hats, and they want them all to thrive, but they're not always congruent, with either the same audience, things like that. But they may have, overlaps or connections that you want to make between the different things that you do. And people think, well, this is really difficult. How do I do that? Do I maintain 4 different websites? I mean, 3 or 4 different, Facebook pages? Like that in and of itself seems impossible. I can barely maintain 1 Facebook page. I mean, this is something I hear all the time from people, let alone you're telling me I need to be on, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, but now I have, 2 different things that I do. And now you're multiple, it's just growing. And if I'm doing that all the time, I'm not actually producing the content or producing, the work that I'm actually doing. And I can't afford to hire someone to do it. This is extremely common, right? And I think, there's obviously many different ways to attack this. Some people bring on family members, some people, choose a different way to focus. Now, some people are just like Nicole, are hyper successful in everything that they do, and they do maintain a presence. She has, the Self-Reliance Festival, she has her Hollow Roast Coffee, and she has LFTN, and she has all these communities that fall within all of those that she promotes, that she participates in. And then not only that, but she, is a public speaker. She's invited to speak a lot. How does that happen? A lot of people ask, like, how do you become a public speaker, a thought leader? How do you get invited to events? So there's also that kind of promotion that you have to do, right? That doesn't just fall into your lap, although a lot of people kind of think that it does, right? But you still have to give people a way to communicate with you if they want you to be a speaker. And then also you're asking people to be speakers on your shows, and you have to have a way to intake that. So I mean, that already sounds like a lot. And the question is, how do you do it, right? And Nicole, how do you do it?
I cry a lot.
And my job is kind of, over the years is it's part, being a therapist for people, to kind of see and watch for danger signs and trigger points, and understanding and seeing when people are overwhelmed, how to suggest a regimen, right? That they can handle, that they can maintain, and then show them a path for growth, and to show them why it's important to do those things. So I think of myself almost, as a practitioner in that way, where,
A marketing therapist.
Yeah, like a little bit of a therapist, where, I'm trying to diagnose a problem. And, as a somewhat aggressive Aries type friend, I'm also very pushy. So I did, in
Well,
fact.
I mean, I appreciate you telling me how to cut my hair.
I did tell Nicole how to cut her hair. I'm going to confess, I did that as well.
Wait, that's made it stick out funny.
Which I love.
I love my hair too. It's actually time for a trim, and I'm actually gonna weave in some red glitter for the holidays.
Oh, I love that.
Just for fun.
Yeah. As a fire sign, we love having friends who listen to us. Those are our favorite kind of friends. But I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not. I mean, it's like, people who know me, as Nicole does, knows that I do not keep my opinions to myself. So they're there. You can take it or leave it. But
well, I don't need you to. Like that whole conversation was, I know what I want in my head, but I don't have the words for it. And then you gave me the words, and I was like,
you knew exactly what you wanted. But I was like, here's what you need to say. but I think, what started this is that I was as an observer of just Nicole's social media feed, I could see that every single day she was putting out a lot of content, but they looked wildly different. There was content that was associated with the Self-Reliance Festival, or even her daily podcast, as you guys know, as listeners and watchers, that she does actually have a pattern to her podcast. Mondays are this, Tuesdays your joint shows, this, Fridays are kind of like your homestead, catching up with what's happening with your pantry, things like that. I don't probably have the right words, but there's a pattern to your podcast throughout the week. But what I was seeing, even though I knew that there was a pattern, that there was just such a visual dissonance with the way you were presenting that I said to her, I go, it's starting to look like these podcasts don't belong under the same brand umbrella. They were different colors, different styles. And I said, have you thought about, creating a more cohesive branded look for these things, so that, especially, when we go on your Facebook page, and if you look at that down the page, or you look at the covers on your YouTube page, it doesn't look like it's a consistent podcast. It looks like there's 5 different things. I'm not sure if, on Tuesdays, is this an LFTN product? Is this a Self-Reliance Festival product? Is this a John Willis product? And it's great that it's, you have a community, a joint product, but let's make it more clear to the audience member that, what it is, and that that the LFTN brand is still is what holds it together, right? Because that's important, because again, people want to know how to find you, what they want to be able to. People like that predictability and the comfort of a brand, right? People find comfort in listening to your podcast, but they want that to extend to when they see something in their feed and it's you reminding them of what podcast is coming next. They want the visual cues. They want, the branding reminder of what to expect every week, and what that's like to listen to you. And, when you're on and we're listening to you, we're watching you, that brand comes through so strongly. And I just wasn't seeing it come through in the visuals that you were posting. And so I kind of raised my hand and I said, Nicole, let's just have a little chat about
she
that.
Said, are you okay? Because she knows I know.
Okay, I better said it that way. But I only said it that way because I had a solution.
Yeah, and you also knew that wouldn't offend me. And here's what was going on in the background, guys, is I have rental houses I got to find renters for. I have a homestead that sells homestead products only locally. I have a podcast that's one brand that also does webinars, and that's where my public speaking is under. My public speaking was exploding this year, just exploding. And then Self-Reliance Festival, its own brand, was exploding, and Hollow Roast Coffee. And I had somebody helping me with graphics, and I told them that we no longer were going to be working together, not because they were a problem, but because I needed to step back and figure out how I was going to scale all this stuff. And in order to do that, I felt I had to feel the pain, and boy, did I feel the pain. And so then I entered into this mode of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. At least I was getting the stuff out, but I was basically in Canva choosing whatever template appealed to me that morning. That's literally how I was making that decision. Oh, this template looks good. Boom, 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 out. And Sue's like, so your podcast looks like it's everybody else's podcast and not your podcast, Nicole. That's how you said it. And I was like, well, that's not good. Maybe I should put my logo in there like I always knew I should. Maybe I should use my colors and my fonts like I always knew I should. And then where I was running into trouble is it's like I'm on the podcast, but I need to sell the coffee and I need to sell Self-Reliance tickets. And I want to sell the other events that we're partners with for SRF. And then there's, random Wild Edible Walk comes up. And that's the conversation she had with me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, I basically asked Nicole, tell me all the things that you're doing and tell me how you explain that to people. Because what is, most important about a personal brand, which if you are somebody that is your business, right? You are a personal brand. You are part of the brand. I know for people who are a little bit more introverted, or, they don't like to see themselves as being upfront, maybe you're not a podcast host like Nicole, and you don't want to think of yourself that way, but the truth is you are, right? In this kind of digital internet economy where that is probably how you're reaching out to people, whether you are, showing your face like Nicole is and speaking or not, your business brand is a personal brand. And the thing is, I just want to tell everyone that you're listening to, and if you are guiding someone else, whether it's your parents or your children who are thinking about that, and that's the part they're scared of, do not be scared of that. First of all, the world is so inclusive and forgiving. I know that's like not what the media wants you to think, okay? But I want you to step back and think about, when you just go on YouTube, like the huge variety of content there is. You can find someone that teaches and does every kind of craft, every kind of art, every kind of music. And it's not about perfection, like Nicole says. It's not about having to fit any certain mold. You are your personal brand, and you are always going to be your best ambassador. So my first lesson to everyone is you can absolutely do this, and you have to do this. That is the number one key to success. The second is, how do you then learn to talk about yourself, right? And what you do. Although Nicole is a communications expert and she is a great public speaker and a great explainer and teacher to other people about how to tell their story. And in fact, that's how I met her, was in a 4-day workshop where she was teaching very well, might I add, expertly, a group of people how to tell their story along a policy issue. I could tell that she wasn't maybe applying that to herself, because you were getting a little spread out, because you're running a business. Because when you're running your business, you're the accountant, you're the marketer, you're actually roasting the coffee, you're this, you're that,
I'm also the janitor.
You're the janitor. People don't, you don't think of it. People are always like, it's so great that you're the CEO, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm also I also order supplies. I'm, right. Right. I mean, I'm a CEO and I still spent, 4 hours a day paying bills. Like, that's not, it's not glamorous. So you do all those things and you're like, you forget the thing that you're actually very good at, which for Nicole, I think, was how do you communicate that? And the thing is, you really have to have a elevator speech, right? A way to explain to people who you are, what you do, and most importantly, where someone can go to find all the details they need to engage with you, to execute a transaction, whether that is watching something on YouTube, buying coffee, getting Nicole as a speaker, signing up and getting tickets. And for Nicole, these are a vast variety of transactions or engagements that she's asking people for. And what was happening is she was like, so you go here to get coffee, and then you sign up for this. And if you want to be a speaker on my podcast, you go here and fill out this form. And if you right? And I was like, you cannot deliver your elevator speech this way. It's too much, and it's difficult. But I have an answer for you, and that is that you guys are like, why there's so much the drum roll? I was like, you need NicoleSauce.com. I go, have you ever thought about creating just one website? And I know everyone's like thinking, oh my God, you're telling Nicole, who's so spread so thin, that she needs yet another website, her fourth website.
It was a little bit of a hard sell at first.
It was a little bit of a hard sell at first, right? And we built this website in 3 days. For her, 2 days. We did the logo, the branding, the colors. We were like, pick some colors, pick some fonts that you like.
Shockingly, I chose red.
But the reason I told her to do this was that way when you're doing your public speaking or you're meeting someone on the fly and they're just coming by, shaking your hand, at the Self-Reliance Festival, you don't have more than a few minutes sometimes, especially when there's 600 people in line waiting to say hi to you, right? That can happen when you're a public speaker or, you're a celebrity basically at these events. You have to start thinking of yourself that way. And it's like, how do you get people to remember that one place where they can go and engage with you on all the different things, right? And so I said, okay, I think you had already owned the URL, right? Or did we? You had
I
already
started
owned
my
it.
podcast on NicoleSauce.com.
Okay.
And
So
when I moved it to livingfreeintennessee.com, my listenership went up, but I had just left the relic there. And keep talking because I'm going to turn the heat off while you talk.
Okay, so I said, let's just put a simple website there. And the purpose of it will be that it links to everything. It's not that you're going to produce original content there to give you just yet another task to do, but that, the way we designed that website was that every kind of in between all the different blocks, there was this repeating block that had all three logos, the Self-Reliance Festival, Hollow Roast, and Living Free in Tennessee. And obviously all of those logos kind of linked back. And that way, if you just meet someone on the fly or you're just giving, a quick rundown of where you can find things, periodically when you scroll this, you get that banner and it's like, boom, boom, boom. So if somebody is like, how do I get in touch with you, Nicole? And you don't, want to say, well, if it's about the podcast, blah, 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 if it's about coffee, go here. So we made this and you can see how, it kind of, it ideally is going to simplify the way Nicole gives her elevator speech, right? It's the elevator speech that we're trying to simplify. And that is critical, especially if you're out in the community quite a bit, you're at a farmer's market or this and that. And I loved seeing the photographs of you at the Self-Reliance Festival. And I noticed that you got the Nicole Sauce logo on the step and repeat. So it's like, it just adds a way for you to bring everything you do together and say, there's all the things that you do, but you yourself are a brand. You yourself are a personality that you're promoting. And that is an important contributor to this community. You have things to say. And then underneath your personal brand are these things that you are a part of. You're not just a podcaster, you're not just a coffee roaster, but you're also, a thought leader, a public speaker, a community member, like I said, a homesteader, that has quite a following, just as a homesteader. Like even if you were to stop doing those other things, stop podcasting and stop roasting coffee, you would still be a homesteader with a following. And I think people would still look to you for advice or for public speaking about that. So I said, you've transcended these things and you need a brand that holds that together. So we did that. I promised her it wouldn't be difficult. We put some things together. We taught her how to run the website and there it is. So
yeah. And I will say, like, where I'm at, so where I went after the site launched was I had said yes to so many speaking engagements without having a personal assistant or somebody to help me keep everything going while I'm on the road. Is I don't update NicoleSauce.com enough. And I resigned myself to, I'm going to choose some things that can kind of be static there and leave it that way for now. And then build in a different approach to communications after I get through the glut of speaking, which turned out to be a really good choice. So I didn't also feel guilty about NicoleSauce.com not getting updated every day when things got even busier during that time with personal issues. So I am just on the other side, and I am now working with somebody to help me execute communications. And you will notice that SRF and Hollow Roast have 3 memes coming out a week. She is doing that without any help from me. I'm like, here is the vision for the next 8 weeks. And here's the core concepts. This is what I am going to lie to you and say I will give to you for materials. But we both know that's not really going to happen. So just make it up. Like, as long as you stay within these confines. And she's doing a great job.
Yeah.
So the next layer is, and now we need to update NicoleSauce.com once a week with the new stuff.
So the key to that, and this will, Jenny, hopefully kind of address your question.
Yeah, I'll bring that question up too.
How do you decide, or how do you, where do you decide where to put your attention, right? It seems like, there's too many things to choose from. And what I try to tell people is to think about putting out content or choosing how to maintain a website or social media in a different way than chronologically. So what seems overwhelming is when you think about, oh my gosh, I have to always constantly have fresh content on my website. It has to be up to date. I have to have, or, social media. So there's two things I want to talk about is learn how to make as many tasks as possible automated, right? So there are things like if you put your podcast, if you always are uploading YouTube videos, for instance, there are ways that YouTube video automatically populates into a website, or, with Nicole's podcast stream, that block automatically populates. There's things where people who sign up for emails, they can sign up for a type of email where every time you post something on your YouTube page, that triggers an email out to them automatically. It says a new YouTube page or YouTube video has been posted. So all of those types of things, the more you take the time to learn and Google, how do I, do this or that? And that might seem technically hard at the beginning, but once you do that, I'm telling you, it's worth it. So learn how to automate as much as possible. The second thing is not to think about producing content chronologically. The first thing that you want to do is split your content into two categories. One we call evergreen content, and the other we call kind of timely content that has to be generated in real time because it's about something that's happening or is seasonal, right? So
Yeah, like the video I made about this is coming up at 2 for Today with Sue, that's timely.
That's a timely piece of content, right?
Mhm.
An evergreen piece of content for Nicole would be like, best practices of canning,
Mhm.
right? She can write that content or write a blog post like that. It is current, right? Or usable for her audience forever, right? It doesn't necessarily change unless something radical changes in the world of canning, in which case maybe she just puts a disclaimer on it. But, that's what we call evergreen content, right? So the first thing you want to address is evergreen content. What can you put on your website or say about yourself, about what you do, about your story that is evergreen? And that can be rotated. And again, pieces of that snippets can be pulled out and automated and programmed for your social media, like Facebook posts, for 12 months in advance if you want, right? That can be done. You can be like, well, that's posts for a year of evergreen content, right? One blog post can be 12 posts of tips about canning that you can use a program that's free, like Hootsuite, that programs that out for years in advance if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You can actually even type out tweets in an Excel sheet and upload that, and it'll just be like boom, 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 and it'll automate forever. So think first about evergreen, and then you can sit back and relax and say, hey, even if something happened to me, I got sick or I had a family issue or whatever it is, there's a post a week for a month or 2 months or whatever makes you feel comfortable. Take the stress off of yourself. Get to that
So
point.
I'm just showing a tool I'm using right now that does cost money. I think it costs me $30 a month, maybe. I should know that number off the top of my head, but I don't. I tested multiple scheduling tools, and this may not be the one I like forever, but it's the one I'm with, and it's working. And that's an example of the week of October 8 to 14. So going into Self-Reliance Festival, this is all stuff that was scheduled out on social media for my LFTN. Okay. And because I am a paid person on this is all the stuff. And this is not that week. So let's go back to that week. That's all the stuff we had for Self-Reliance Festival. Holler roast.
It's just like that chicken roaster. You set
Yeah.
it and you forget it.
Yeah.
Well,
Holler roast has less, but whatever.
As someone that also does crisis communications, I will just put a tiny asterisk and say, always be aware, like if something happens in your community and you feel like you should pause posts for some reason out of respect, out of, some kind of tragedy, please know how to do that, because there are rare times where you have programmed things, you've forgotten you've programmed things, and then it becomes insensitive because something's happening in your community. So do know how to stop automated posts without, too much rigmarole. But for the most part, automation and thinking of evergreen content is a way to take stress off of your mind, right?
Yeah.
And then the second thing is then all you have to do is think about your timely content, right? Then all that's left to do each day is, hey, post about Sue coming on the podcast, that. And, Nicole knew about that also a couple weeks in advance too. So now you're only left with like,
Oh, and
hey,
then Sue did a photo shoot, so I had a whole new photo of her.
well, those photos are old, but yes, I mean, but you have, so now you're only worried about, okay, am I having a sale? Am I having this? Who's the speaker or whatever it is? And we've reduced your workload quite a bit. And then my next tip is then now you're writing timely content, write it thematically instead of, again, chronologically. The most stressful thing to do is to wake up every morning and think, I have to write for today, and then wake up Tuesday and write for Tuesday. Don't do that. Let's say, again, Nicole wants to talk about single origin coffee, right? But she wants to make some of that timely. She wants to talk about it for holidays. She wants to talk about it for, gift giving or this or that. But when her mind is on that one topic or whatever topic is relevant to you, I suggest to people to write 10 different posts at one time while your mind is on that, and then save it. So, for my clients, it's like, okay, if you're talking about taxes right now, write 10 posts about taxes instead of going Tuesday, what should I write about? Wednesday, what should I write about? I can't write about taxes again because I wrote about that yesterday. That's going to make your mind turn, and it's going to stress you out. Sit down and say, taxes. What are some things I like to say? Write 10 things down. That actually, if you're an actual expert on taxes, that should take you 10 minutes, and that's 10 posts on that, and then move to that, and then organize that. And then again, you sort those out and make those timely, right? So I think, to me, that's how you kind of take the stress out. And then to kind of answer the question, like, how do you decide like where to put your focus? You really want to think about your audience, right? Like, I always think about, what is your audience that they want from you? What are they asking you? Think about your frequently most asked questions that people engage with you on. But the other thing is, what do you think people look for on the internet? Like, what kind of content attracts people to your product or your website or your community, and try to answer those questions with your content, and put your time in there to show that you're who you are, show your personality, show your expertise, and provide people a way to engage with that. And it doesn't actually take much, to do that. Talk about what you know about.
To verbally answer a question about what program was I using for scheduling, right now it's Metricool, which I think I got from you. So you gave me a list of 3 or 4 to try.
Oh my goodness, I don't know if it was for me.
I don't know. I did a Facebook post, and there were like all sorts of people telling me stuff, and Hootsuite was too expensive. It was like $100 a month, which was not going to work. I think it was, Hootsuite, because they just went up in price. They used to be the one. And then Buffer doesn't work all the time. Like, I was always scheduling on Buffer, and then it didn't happen. So Metricool fit the bill. I also use repurpose.io, and I may drop them. Not sure. They do video stuff specifically. So, so I was kind of flashing through on the screen some different ways that I have thought thematically. The Hey Baby series is my not timely series, right? It's just sort of evergreen. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday that they come out. I can record 10 of those in an hour because they're not long videos, but people love them. So we keep doing them. And, I was at Jack Spirko's, and every 10 minutes was like, oh, another Hey Baby video, like out of context. So that has really freed me up to be able to do some things. And I will say, once I had the structure, because what I've also come to this year, which I've come to in the past, is that airplane time is some of the best writing time for those things where I have to come up with 20 coffee videos or whatever. And I was on a flight for 4 hours. 3 of those 4 hours I spent writing the weekly focus. That's when I wrote the weekly focus for 3 brands for the rest of the year. And so now it's not like, what am I writing about next week about things? It's like, okay, this is what because I start with, what am I selling this week? What one thing? What's a backup thing if I want to refer to something else? And then what other things unrelated to selling do I think we need to talk about as part of that brand?
You want to know why working on the airplane works so well?
Because nobody interrupts me because I don't let them.
This is going to get us into a side topic, but it's a topic.
Let's do it.
But then I'm going to go back and answer.
I'm building an airplane booth right over here.
I see your question about your videos, and
I'll bring it up. I'll bring that up. I haven't started.
But I do want to answer this question because I actually think it's relevant. But humor me for a quick second. So there's this psychological theory that when you are working and you're not allowed to interact with the people around you, but they're watching you. Okay, you're less likely to have that kind of distraction or procrastination response. And that is because it's weird if you get out your laptop and everyone's like, and then suddenly you're like fidgeting, you're this, you're that, you're chewing gum, you're combing your hair, you're going to do your makeup. Like you feel kind of a tiny bit self-conscious because these people don't know you, and you obviously like thought you were going to work and then you weren't. So like in they call this actually cave theory, and there's actually communities now that you can join online called cave working, and this has actually really grown in popularity because so many people now work from home. And the problem with working from home is that you have no accountability, and for some people they need that. Now, it's not that because they need micromanaging, it's not because they need a buddy or a boss. They actually don't need those things because they don't need someone that they can chat to. So cave working works like this, and you can create it within your own community. So I actually think this is relevant for you guys because you guys have such a community, but you guys are spread out around the country, and a lot of you work on your own projects, right? So the way it works, or you can sign up for one of these things that, it's a membership thing. So you log on at an agreed upon time. It's a 3-hour block, and you have to have your Zoom camera on, and you start off everyone goes around and says what they're going to work on, and then you mute yourself, but you can't turn your camera off. Okay. And then you have to sit there and work for the 3 hours. So basically it's just holding you accountable that everyone can see that you're still at your laptop working, but you're not talking, there's no chatting. I mean, obviously you can, everyone's an adult. If you need to go use the, ladies' room, of course, just go ahead and do that. But you're not, like watching YouTube videos, eating your lunch, doing your makeup because your camera is on, and and it's very similar to being on an airplane, right? There's people watching you, but you're silent. Okay. So
hopefully you're silent.
Hopefully you're silent. Well, usually people who are on it, they're not like typing and simultaneously talking, unless maybe I do that. I'm a talker, okay, but I try not to do that on an airplane because I know people don't like that. But if that's something that helps you concentrate, I encourage you to Google that term and look up kind of the theories behind it and some tips of either doing that just within your own community or with a bunch of friends, or joining one of these online communities, because for a lot of people, that's made a huge difference in their productivity while working from home.
It's also because I don't buy internet access on the plane, and I literally can't go look something up. And so I'll be writing blah, 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 question mark. What's the data behind said item on list? Rabbit trail just happened.
Yeah.
And I will literally find myself, I went to look up, like what kind of concrete I need to buy. And I ended up looking at faucets for my bathroom, which has nothing to do with and then I'm like, why am I here? How did I get here? And so I've been working really hard on eliminating that, but it's hard. And on the airplane, because I just don't buy internet, or if it's free internet, I don't log on to the internet on the airplane. It's like, okay, I have to just highlight that, come back, look it up later, and finish this thing, and then I can go fill in that gap, whatever it is.
No, definitely. But I also guarantee you, if no one was around you, you'd actually get less work done. It's the fact that there's just this slight, peeping Tom kind of idea to it. I'm telling you, there's this.
Oh, I believe you.
Logical because you're like, someone's watching me. If I just sit here and just hit the K button on my keyboard for an hour, they're going to think I'm crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I got to look like I'm doing something. But, you know, but for a lot of people who, you know, to me, that makes total sense because it gives you a finite time, you know, it's temporary, but like, you know, everyone is there working, and the case studies or the testimonials, I mean, that people have given for this said that it's changed their lives. But let's get back to answering
Well,
this
no, I
question.
mean, I think that's all
But
related because part of keeping up on an aggressive marketing schedule for 3 brands is spending that 3-hour period of time thinking about the thing.
you know,
And
it's
I had a really good system down where Sunday afternoon, that's what I did for the week ahead. And then I was out speaking all the Sundays. And without that block of time, it really hurt because then I would do it Monday, but then I would also roast coffee Monday. And then I had choir Monday and I had my show Monday. And also we should cook dinner Monday, you know, and it would be just like race. As soon as I got up Monday, all the way till I collapsed in bed, which also wasn't necessarily my best work. Like if you see things going out with typos, it's usually the fault of Monday, which is my fault for scheduling it that way.
I mean, I'm sure you get the same question I get a lot, which is how do you possibly do all the different things that you do, right? Do you get that question a lot?
Yeah,
I bet you do.
I do.
Because I get that question a lot too, because people can't believe, you know, all the things I do, you know, running a networking group. I'm the communications chair of Right Now Women PAC. I used to be an adjunct professor at George Washington. I was homeschooling my daughter, and people are like, that's just not possible, right? And the thing is, they're like, do you sleep? And to be honest, I don't sleep that much, but it's that I just make sure that I'm only doing high quality things. And I've also trained the people around me not to bring me things or conversations of low quality. Like, you know, I use the word pristine a lot. I was like, that is not a pristine meeting. And what I mean by that is that it wasn't at the level of which it should have involved my time. And people start to understand that, you know, that it has to be filtered, right? So that it's crystal clear like water, you know, before it gets to me. And if it doesn't, then I can't do it. I have to make sure those things don't come to me that way. Like I don't do muddy water, you know? And I use that analogy for people to understand, like, that is how I teach a college class, you know, do communications for volunteer for a PAC that fundraises for women running for Congress, homeschool. I'm a single mother. I run 3 businesses. You know, I run a networking group. I do public speaking. You know, you can't let the muddy stream water get to you. Somebody has to stop it. So don't accept that into your life, or into your time or into your day. And you have to tell people, you have to be blunt and go, this conversation that we had, or this meeting that we had, or this product that you brought me, or whatever it is, it cannot happen again. This was not ready. This, you know, for you to bring to me, or this wasn't appropriate, or this wasn't done, or this wasn't a question that was inappropriate to ask me. And that sounds crazy and sometimes a little rude, but if you are running the business, you are the top of the chain. You know what I mean? If you're drinking the poison, everyone dies. And you know what I mean? That is not what your employees would want, or your audience or your customers would want. So you have to treat yourself well. And that includes the environment that you digest, right? And so that's something that's in addition to how you manage, how you produce the content, is what gets through to you during the day.
Yeah. And I'm more of a solopreneur than you. As a solopreneur, that's harder. It's harder.
It definitely is, but I tell everyone, you have to, once you're a business owner, your most precious thing is your mind and your time.
Yeah.
And if someone's poisoning either of those things,
Yeah.
you have to stop it.
Yeah, and the word no is really important, and it's taken me a long time to learn how to use it. I will say that. Still not perfect at it. Okay, here's the question you wanted to bring up. I have a variety of videos: schooling, motorcycle travels, DIY addict. Is it better to have separate YouTube channels or one channel with the full variety of topics?
So My answer to that is the audience the same for those topics, or are they different? And I can't answer that because I'm not an expert on those topics. You are, right? And is the community that you're cultivating for each of those topics, you know, a community, or are they separate communities, right? In other words, what brings them together more? You, or meaning that they like to hear about these topics. They might not have liked these topics together, except for there's something about the way you present them that brings the topics together. Then they should be one YouTube channel, or what they call a channel. I guess they really call it a profile now. I don't know if they call it, but when within that, there actually can be channels where there's topic focused videos that you can create, like sub channels within your YouTube presence, right? So if it's the personality that ties everyone together, but if it's more so you really want to be well known for that one topic within the a broader community of one of those individual things, and you really want to be seen somewhat differently, in those different communities, or the communities just don't overlap, or like you literally have a different persona when you're talking about this versus that, then I would make different channels because you're using different hashtags. I mean, all these videos should have hashtags so that it pulls into other communities, but also you want to game the algorithm a little bit, right? YouTube's biggest benefit is that it recommends another video once you're done with one, and it's going to guess at what you want to watch, right? And that's what keeps people on there for hours. And so if you think that your videos are better off in the algorithm, more disparate, because they really should be tied to their each own communities because the audiences are really different, then split them up.
Yeah, I can see that. The other thing you can do is have separate channels and have one channel that's all of the things. What I know from limited YouTube experience is being a jack of all trades on YouTube is a slow grow model. And that's what I am with living free in Tennessee. But in instances where there's a narrow focus on the channel, like I fix Volkswagen cars, that's Humble Mechanic, and that's all he is about on his channel, explode. People just grow faster for that narrow focus, it seems. And I think that's the audience thing.
It definitely is. And it's definitely the proper use of hashtags. You really have to use a lot of hashtags in your title and the description of your YouTube. That really helps the algorithm. So really look at the hashtags that other people are using in like-minded videos or similar topics that you would want your video to be following, and you want to use all those hashtags. I mean, I see videos with 20 hashtags, and if that makes sense, that's going to string all those videos together.
So a tool I've been playing with on that, Sue, even though I haven't really implemented it yet, is called TubeBuddy, which is a browser extension you can install, and it helps analyze and helps you figure out hashtags. And then it also shows you which parts of your videos are resonating the most. So you can go back and be like, okay, people like this. I'm going to do more of that. So anyway, that's something Toolman Tim has leveraged that really well with his channel this year. It takes time and investment, though. Again, that's something where you have to look at the analytics and actually use the tool. Yeah.
But it would make a huge difference. I can see that making a huge difference.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's just a thank you. Okay, so let's go back to how does somebody who's an online brand sort of bridge that with their personal brand? Like, how do you see that working? How do they make that less complicated?
I think that the first thing I always tell people is, you should know what happens when you Google your own name and Google your own brand, right? And then you want to ask yourself, what is it that you want to happen when you Google your own name and you Google your own brand, right? So there's a variety of different difficulties that can happen here. If you have a really common name like Sam Smith, right? The issue is if you Google Sam Smith, there's already a famous singer named Sam, but it's like you have a problem of like, how does someone even find me if I have a name like that, right? And if that's my brand, right? So there's a problem on one end like that. The other problem is you haven't collected all your things together in one place, like a NicoleSauce.com. And it's hard to have a personal brand if you don't do that, right? You maybe have a Twitter handle, you maybe have this. So the first, the answer to that question first is to Google yourself and see what you see. If you see a lot of, let's say you get quoted in the media a lot, right? And the first things that you see are, media outlets that just happen, news stories that happen to have your name in it. You might want to consider, well, should I be trying to, collect all those clips so they don't disappear over time? If you have, like I said, a name that just kind of disappears because 10,000 other people have the exact same name, should you institute a middle name or a middle initial or something, that always goes with your name to kind of differentiate yourself so that people tend to Google that together, and start establishing places with that name. So I think that, the first thing to do is just to do a self-analysis of what's out there content-wise for yourself, as well as your brand, and then think about what do you want it to look like? Are there certain things you want to depress, that you Google and you're like, ooh, that was, a media interview I did a long time ago about something else entirely. I actually don't want that to be the first thing people find about me because it has nothing to do with what I want to do right now. So there's just so many, different answers to that question. But I think, the place you want to start is, what is my actual personal brand that other people see? Because it's hard to see that for yourself. And you start that by Googling yourself. And then you want to think, what is the ideal thing that I want people to see? And then you try to move towards that, right? You try to point people to the things that you want everyone to be on, and you try to grow that place and depress everything else by building up the content and saying, okay, I want to tie these things together. I don't want to tie these things together, right? I mean, if your name also happens to be Monica Lewinsky, that's a very tough name to have.
You know what? So I'm looking. So Monica Lewinsky, very interestingly enough, this is somebody whose branding career I have followed since the incident. And you'll notice that, yes, the scandal comes up, but there's a lot of other things that are starting to come up now. And what has happened is she has started getting out and her Twitter profile is hilarious. Like, she's brought a sense of humor into her personal brand that makes you not focus on the scandal and just laugh at what she's saying. But then she talks about other things. And I was like, I wonder if like what's supplanting the scandal from there. And you see that she's talking about what it's like to be bullied and some other stuff there. But her branding challenge was that no matter what she does, that thing is going to come up.
It's going to be first.
And I met her in person once, and she was like, it's really hard for me to find a job right now because every time I get interviewed for a job, they discover who I am. And then it's like, So she ended up working out of country for a while. I don't know if she's still working out of country, but she went out of country. And then at some point she got serious about, I'm going to own this and I'm going to change the brand. And I mean, she's executed that.
She has. So. I mean, she has. She's actually great on television. I mean, she's a great communicator.
She has a degree in marketing.
Right. I mean, like, she's very well spoken is what I mean. Like, she's a very good commentator. She has a television presence. Obviously she's attractive on camera, I mean, so she had, she just said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And a lot of people have put her on camera, and she has, had actually, I don't want to say like a newscaster career, but something of a commentator type career in the United States. It has become available to her, but not without, perseverance of her own. It didn't just land in her lap. Right. So I think that, those things are important. So I would say Google yourself, and you do have to have nice photographs of yourself. You do have to have images of yourself. So that aren't like selfies, right? So whether that's even just a friend taking photos, or, obviously, ideally, I think professional headshots for photographs. there's amazing things that AI can do if you have like a kind of okay photo and you want, there's like some AI websites that will fix up your photo and put a suit on you if you're not wearing a suit for LinkedIn, or there's all these things that that can be done. But I recommend doing all of those things, because having imagery is obviously highly tied into your personal brand.
So I ran into something with that I want to talk about, and that's like I hired a professional photographer to come take pictures of me, and they got great pictures of my homestead. And the pictures of me don't look like I look right now on the video screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally figured out what was going on, because he came out and he noticed it. He came out and shot a second time, and it was, I think, time of day. The sun
Mm-hmm.
was up high, and it made my face look about 4 feet wider, which then doesn't look like me here. And I was like, why do I look like this on video and that in the pictures? I mean, yes, that looks like me. That's recognizable as Nicole Sauce, but I feel like it's so different from what people see every day on video that I can't use these photos.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lighting thing. And so what I realized is I ended up accidentally hiring a really good landscape photographer who doesn't know what to do with all that.
Yes,
And I need somebody who specializes in people faces.
That's what I was going to say, is that very often, more often than not, someone who photographs things cannot photograph people. And then people who do portraits cannot do action shots. I know that sounds crazy, but there are very, very different skills as photographers. So you have to think about, when you're hiring a photographer, what kind of photo, even if it's of yourself. So if you're like a sports figure, you want an action shot of you doing something. People who normally take portrait shots, they don't know how to capture those shots. They don't understand things like, having you be in motion so that your muscle tone and shows, like you can't just be holding something. You have to be literally hitting a ball, because there's a big difference in the way your muscles and your tendons are engaged. All these things very much matter. Lighting, all of those things. So, you can't take a landscape photographer, a portrait photographer, an action shot photographer, and make them. Very rarely do I find somebody who can do all three of those things. So you have to really choose. If I'm hiring a photographer for a press conference, I don't then take that photographer to, an action shot, right? They're just not the same people. And they're very individually talented people in their own things. But it's like taking, a cartoonist to say, well, now I need you to, do like a piece of modern art. I mean, they're just a different kind of artist. So that is very important when you're choosing a photographer. It's choose a photographer whose shots are similar to the ones that you are looking for. Don't try to make somebody say, well, just because you have a nice camera, you can do this. That's putting too much pressure on the photographer. Definitely.
Yes. Okay. Jenny says, how often should you update headshots, and how important is updating LinkedIn?
I think headshots you update only when you feel like that headshot just no longer represents you. So I don't have a hard and fast rule about that. I think if you feel that it is authentically you, like I never judge anyone like, oh my God, you look 10 years younger or old. I mean, like, of course people age or change their hairstyle or wear glasses, don't wear glasses, things like that. I don't think that's a reason to need a new photo. I think it's more about, like, when you look at it, do you feel like it's authentically you, right? Now, in terms of actually updating the facts on LinkedIn, that the answer to that is constantly. And the reason why is because I constantly hear people say, I can't do it now because if I do it now, my employer will think I'm looking for a job, or that'll trigger to people that something's happened or that I lost my job. And if you don't want people to think that, then you update your LinkedIn all the time. And so never wait until you're looking for a job, out of a job, to update your LinkedIn. Always constantly refresh your LinkedIn with different skills, change out the header image. If you wrote an article, you appeared in the news, you have a new blog, you want to change out a featured video, a featured link to something, like, post on LinkedIn. Be active on it. If a concern of yours is, when I look for a job, I don't want that to trigger people. There's also a setting on LinkedIn that, makes it so that when you do make edits, it doesn't broadcast it out. That used to be the default setting. That's not anymore. But, it's the same thing with your resume. The hardest time to write your resume is when you haven't updated it as things change to you. Every time you get a new title, you change your job, update your resume, even if you're not looking for a job, because the time you need to update it, and you're trying to think back like 3 positions or trying to describe like the job you had 3 years ago, that's the hardest time to do it. So
I feel personally targeted by that comment, Sue.
do it constantly.
I don't think I've updated my resume in 16 years.
Don't let your passport expire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. No, it's expired. It is expired. It expired this month, but I have a 6-month cushion because of the COVID stuff to get it renewed.
You do, but you can't. A lot of countries, foreign countries, won't let you enter unless you have a passport that extends 6 to 12 to 18 months past when you're planning on leaving. So a lot of people think, I've got plenty of time to take that trip. And then you get there and they're like, you can't enter this country because your passport expires in 6 months. So it's the same thing with your LinkedIn. Don't let that happen.
Here's why I missed it. I lost my wallet with all of my ID except for my passport, and I was like about to ship my passport off, and I was like, nope, this is now my only valid ID until I get everything replaced. But everything's replaced now. So yeah, that was a good thing. I don't need to go out of country right now, but I did then forget. So I'm really glad you said that.
I'm again, the person who plans the school field trip is your most annoying friend.
I just need to get a picture with a white background. That's yeah. Everything else is done. Oh, you remember when we used to have to go pay for pictures for those at Rite Aid?
You still do. Well, no, that's not true. You are
can
allowed
take it
to
with
take
your
own
phone.
picture. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because my brother made me last Thanksgiving take his picture in my apartment. So you're right. I do remember taking his passport photo.
I was really shocked when I found out I could do that, and pleased at the same time.
No, it's nice. They give you very explicit instructions about it too.
Yes.
But yeah, as long as you don't have wallpaper, you're fine.
No wallpaper.
No
white
wallpaper.
background.
White background.
Glasses off.
Right.
Don't do this.
Right. No, you're right.
On the audio was like, what'd she just do? I just did my cousin impression.
What are we even talking about?
I mean, who knows? I don't know. Goofy faces. Okay. One last question. We should probably wrap because we've been on an hour. So let's just do this. So again, back for my people who are like newly starting their brand. What are the key elements to consider about your brand, and how often should you refresh your brand?
I'm going to take that second question first, because a lot of people are afraid to change something once they've said it. Like they think because I've chosen a logo or because I've chosen a URL or this or that I can never, ever alter it. That is not true. First of all, people make tweaks to their logos and things like that all the time. And it's okay to do that. And in fact, especially if it's a minor tweak or this or that or a color, it doesn't matter. I'm personally a fan of logos that can be recognizable in any color, right? That they're not color dependent. And that's how my logo is for my company, right? We have a color palette that consists of like 6 colors, and the logo can exist in any of those 6 colors. And we change the colors of it all the time to fit whatever instance we're in. We've had the logo made in neon, lights. So it to me, a good logo like exists regardless of what color it's in. But it's okay to update a logo too, to tweak it, to make it fun, that kind of thing. So I think, a logo should it should be strong. I mean, the one thing I will say about logos, which I'm very, and we've had actually a podcast session about this. So maybe Nicole, if we'll have to look for it, but we did a whole set, we did like a whole 2-hour thing on logos, but you should always have a horizontal logo and a square logo. That's an icon that can be used as a profile. So it's got to be something, it doesn't have to spell out your name, but it's got to be something round or square, and then what we call a letterhead version, a long one. It has to be able to be rendered in one color. it pains people, but you'll never be able to put it on any swag unless your color is able to be done in black and white. So if it has gradients, if it has things on it, you will never be able to print it on a hat. It'll never get embroidered. It'll never get put on a mug. It has to be renderable in one color only. And these are the rules, okay? The other thing I want to caution is, even if you get an icon from a stock photography like iStock or Getty Art, those items cannot be used to reproduce logos. That's against the terms of stock photography. It has to be altered slightly. And the reason for that is you will never be able to trademark a logo that you use stock photography for, because you can't guarantee that someone else didn't use the same element in their logo. So if you used a piece of stock as part of your logo, it is automatically non-trade marketable. So you have to have an artist, a graphic designer, alter something, a shape, or create you a custom shape if you ever hope to seek a trademark on that logo. So just keep in mind. But if you go to iStock.com or any iStock photo and you go down to the terms of service, it'll tell you no logos. You can't turn any stock photography or icons into logos. Okay, so how often should you refresh it? Again, I just think it depends on your audience and you and whether or not it feels authentic. If you just start feeling disconnected from it and it doesn't represent you, then it's time to refresh. And then you explain to people why. As long as you can explain to people why, you have to tell people why you're doing it, it's fine. Don't just do it for no explanation. Tell a story. Right? There should be a reason and a story behind it. Now I've forgotten your first question. What's the first thing you do?
Oh, key elements to think about as you're developing your brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really is. It really is like an elevator speech. If you meet a perfect stranger and you wanted to tell them something about yourself, what would that be? What is that? You think of that, you have 10 seconds, 20 seconds. You should probably have different versions of this, but if I gave you 10 seconds to introduce yourself to me, 20 seconds, 3 minutes, think about these kind of short conversations you might have with somebody. What is it that you say about yourself, right? Some of these go really in depth and are about you business-wise. Some of them are more personal, but you should be able to do all these things. Practice with your friends, practice with your family. That is your personal brand. And then you want to try to put that feeling and that message onto a website, onto a business card, onto a logo, so that all of those things fit together.
Brilliant. It is that simple. And if you are a member of LFTM, we have webinars on this we have a series of 3 about developing your personal brand that Sue ran. I recommend log in and go check those out. There are links to them. So any last thoughts before we sign off, Sue?
Feel free to connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those things, or to reach out to Nicole if you have individual questions and you want me to answer them off to the side that you didn't want answered on video here. I'm happy to answer them.
Sue, thanks as always for giving us your time. I always learn things when we have these talks, even though I get to talk to you all the time when I want to. So thanks for being on, and I look forward to seeing you on again.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.